Hi Liz, and thank you so much for joining us. It's obviously we've known each other a lot of years.
We have. We go back a long time.
I know.
2011, I think, isn't it?
Wow.
Something like then.
Wow, I didn't realise it was
we
that
met.
far back. Yes,
Yep.
yes, it would be. We met at an entrepreneurial
Event in London.
yeah. And I don't know how we ended up just clicking and spending so much time together, and over the years.
Northern girls, that's what it is. I think we've got a lot in common, really. You know, we're girls that have worked our own way up, aren't we? We're sort of self-starters.
Yeah. And I mean, I've just loved your journey and sort of, you know, all that you do. And obviously, we've worked quite closely. You're my go-to expert, and you're our go-to expert in Beauty Directors Club for IP and all things to do with protecting your business.
Yeah.
Which is so important. And I think as time goes on and things progress into the future, I think it's going to become more and more so as well.
Well, thanks for asking me, Susan, because, I mean, number one, I think beauty is a really important area. I mean, personally, I'm interested in it. And business, of course, again, you know, I'm a big fan of business and looking at the intangible assets in those businesses, looking at the brands, looking at the databases, looking at the software, looking at the changes. I think it's a really interesting space, IP and beauty.
Yeah, perfect. I think it'd be really interesting for all of our listeners and viewers to know a little bit about your background, because you've been in the industry for so long, but I mean, you still as a boutique company, you stand out, as I say, in the world's best, in the top 5%. And it's no mean feat to do that, you know, because there's so many companies out there. So is that something you've always intended? And how did you get into this industry?
Well, it's interesting. I've got a science background. So my first degree was in genetics and cell biology. And I actually worked in the pharmaceutical industry for a while and then changed and became a lawyer. But because I got that technical background, I was automatically kind of gravitationally pulled, as it were, to do intellectual property, which is a lot about technology. So when I qualified as a lawyer, which is about 30 years ago now, I qualified into doing intellectual property, and it interests me. The whole subject interests me, which is great. It's great to find your groove in that sort of way. And I worked for a number of bigger law firms and then set up on my own in 2007 because I realised that actually a lot of SMEs are actually badly served when it comes to intellectual property. You know, you either go to a really big law firm, which is hugely expensive, or you shop around in the smaller law firms, of whom there are a handful, but none of them with the sort of breadth of experience and depth that we have. So I knew that there was a niche there.
Yeah. And I mean, what I love about your company as well is because you deal with sometimes the things I've come to you about, I've like thought, is that relevant? You know, because what I love is that like nothing seems too small, and like when I look at some of the things that you do are absolutely huge and huge cases, and I think there's isn't many companies that can cover all of that breadth, and I think you've done it beautifully with your
Well,
company.
I've got a view that every client matters, and you know, if you are a small, you know, you're a small company and you just need your trademark registering, or you just need something looking after, then you're just as important. Your money's just as good to me as it is coming from a big firm, you know, a big brand, I'm agnostic about that. I want to get IP out there and make sure that people are aware of just how valuable it is in businesses.
Because I love your tagline. It's like, you dream it, we protect it. I love that. Absolutely love that.
Yeah.
And I think that because I do think that, and I was one of these people who didn't really understand how IP works in a business, what you can protect, what you can't. So for our industry, the beauty industry, but we do get a lot of entrepreneurs just listening to the podcast as well. What would you say are the main things that you can protect and you should be protecting?
Well, I think everybody really needs to have it on their radar screen now. I mean, there was a time when I started in the law many years ago where you'd say to people, well, you might not necessarily want to invest in the trademark just now because, you've got other businesses in a startup, other expenses, I should say, in a startup. But now I say to people, actually, you need your trademark from the get-go for the simple reason that social media has changed everything. So you put a brand onto YouTube, for example, or you put it onto social media and it can become a global phenomenon really quickly. And I've got some great examples of that. I mean, I had a lady in Sheffield who had some great retro hair products. I say retro, they were all retro styled, lovely packaging. And it was all sort of very 1930s, sort of gentleman's pomade and things like that for hair. And she found that her market took off massively in places like Turkey because I think that it was appealing to that sort of, buying British products, men who had a lot of hair, because presumably it needed management of some kind or another. So those markets actually took off really quickly, almost as quickly as her UK market did. And we see things like that all the time. One of the big areas at the moment is, again, it's in the hair care ranges. Some people bringing brands over from the States and so on and so forth. It's a huge growth area, is beauty. And if you look at the number of brands that we've got, I'd say if you're going to look at anything first, look at your branding.
Yeah.
But IP goes to more than that. There are people out there who come out with new formulations, for example, new formulations perhaps of a skin cream, and one with specific kind of properties to it that they might want to patent a formulation. Patenting protects the innovation behind it. Or, for example, people who've got AI, aren't we all talking about AI now in businesses?
Yeah.
What can AI bring to my business? How can it sort out what customers are going to spend, what my existing audience looks like? If I put that through some kind of AI filter, will I be able to upsell these clients with X, Y, and Z? And those are all intangible assets, your database, your kind of the AI that maybe, or AI programs that you put together, the kind of formulations that you come out, the way that you do business. They've all got a certain element of intangible asset about them that makes your business unique. And that it's getting people to recognise that's really important.
Can we run through all of what the different things are? Because I think that's where it gets quite confusing if you're
it's
not...
It's complicated. Yeah.
So can we start with copywriting? What is copywriting and how does that involve us as an industry?
Right. Well, copywriting is the normal thing that you might think about with copywriting would be, say, for example, photographs or databases or written instructions, that kind of thing. A copyright protects the kind of, it protects the physical expression of something. So, for example, a photograph, a piece of music, a piece of software, a piece of written work. So copyright might be in the business in terms of the photographs and images that you've taken. In terms of your website, that would be protected by copyright.
So with something like that, like before and after images, putting those out on social media, how do you protect those? Because you'll see someone's images on someone else's posts and things. How can you protect those? Is that just a watermark, or is it?
Well, copyright belongs to the person that takes the photograph. So say, for example, you were the salon owner and you were photographing my work in the salon. The photograph would belong to you individually, or possibly even the salon, because the salon employed you to take those photographs. And in that case, obviously, you're not just going to let anybody use those photographs. Unfortunately, of course, it's very easy to lift them on social media. So you can put watermarks in them. You can also make sure that, for example, somebody's consented. You should make sure that, customers consented to have those photographs taken, and you've got a written consent there. And then you have to just jump on it and say, look, those are my photographs that you've taken. you're passing your work off as my work. In fact, you're trading on my good reputation. I've got good results here, so you can pursue people under, copyright and passing off. Quite often in those sorts of instances where people copy images, I know that is a big problem in your arena.
Same with sort of written content as well. So if you wanted to copyright protect something that you'd written, is that again just writing it on the bottom, or is that
put a C in the circle next to it. Yeah. There's no registration process with it. Some people try and protect it by sending it to themselves first class post or whatever. In the States there is a copyright registry. If you're in the States you can register your copyright. Over in most of the world you can't do that. You can do it in China incidentally as well. But putting a C in a circle, copyright Susan's work underneath, 2025, date it, that kind of thing. That's the sort of thing that you can put on. It declares that you own it.
Yeah. So if you were writing a blog and things, is that the same for something like
exactly, that? Put your copyright on it. Nice. You probably remember in the old days when people did drawings and things, they'd sign it, wouldn't they, at the bottom? And I mean, this is how artists always used to put their signatures onto paintings, was to say, well, this is my painting, this is, signed by me, and that's a badge of authenticity. The trouble is these days, of course, it's never been easier to copy.
I know, yeah. So with websites...
Yeah.
Are we getting then into license? And when the thing that I've seen happen is with websites where a web designer has made a website, but then when someone wants to move, they've said that it's their website and things. What's that?
Well, I think with websites, the one thing that I would counsel people in doing is making sure that they own everything that's on it. So making sure that they own the images that's on it, making sure that they own the copyright that's on it. If you have some third party makes that for you or does that for you, then you should insist when they're paid that there's an assignment of those rights back to you. Hosting can be another problem too, because that's quite often the hosting is tied in with the website creation. So you've got a website there and somebody's effectively got the keys to the door because they are hosting it. And again, I've always insisted in my business on having, my own backup of the website, my own access to the website. All the material is made by us. You would expect that, wouldn't you? The photographs and the images are properly licensed by us. So it's all about ownership and thinking things through to start with copyright.
I think this is the thing, isn't it? It's thinking about before you jump in. Because, with things like a new website and things, it's really exciting to get it, and you're more intent on having that website than thinking, right, what could go wrong? What do I need to think about protecting?
Yeah, and websites are hugely valuable. If you get a website that is naturally SEO, brings up an awful lot of organic traffic, then you want to protect it. You don't want somebody to slavishly scrape off your website and reuse your material to create their own SEO-friendly website. And you do see that from time to time. Google will penalise people for it, but it does happen.
So if someone, again, this is something else I've seen, someone will copy something off someone's website.
Yeah.
Things like that, is it just a case that you would personally write to that other person, and then if they don't take it down, then you go down
and you have to come and phone me.
Yeah, exactly. And then you just just sort it out just so simply.
That's what I do say to people is try the friendly approach first. Sometimes people don't necessarily know that they've done anything wrong, or a junior member of staff will have done something, or even a website developer will have done something, and you think, oh no, you shouldn't have done that. But you know what, we're all human and it's a complicated world. But there are instances where people do it deliberately, and they do it because, somebody's already got a stellar reputation and they want to copy that. You see that with counterfeiting. There'd be no counterfeit products, would there, if everything was of the same standard or available to the public in the same way?
Yeah. Yeah.
But so copyright's a common one. Trademarks are another very common one that we come across in the beauty industry.
So what is a trademark and what can you trademark?
What can you trademark? Well, a trademark is normally like a brand. It could be a name, it could be a logo, it could be what we call a stylized word mark. So say, for example, you've got Susan Routledge and you write it in very, fancy font with a logo on it and a unicorn sat on top or something or other. That would be what we call a stylized trademark. And trademarks are what they call geographic in nature. So you have to register wherever you use. So you register in the UK, in the EU, in the USA. We help people do that because a lot of people that we act for are innovators or are, for example, people who are, launching new products, and they have to have a strategy. We encourage people to have a proper strategy about where they're going to trade and where they're going to get cover, where they're going to get protection. And we see this time and again, particularly with things that are manufactured in China. You'll go out to China, you'll get something manufactured out there, and then what you'll find is that the Chinese manufacturer has copied your product, filed for the trademark in China, and then on the back of that has filed for the trademark in the US. And of course, if you're late to the party and you find out 12 months down the line that your Chinese manufacturer has actually filed in China, filed in the USA, that can block your access to the market. And it's one of those things that we have to unpick because we then have to go to the trademark registry and say, hey, this has been filed in bad faith, it shouldn't have been filed. This is a manufacturer who's sending goods to the UK or the EU or wherever. But those are sort of elephant traps we try and avoid people getting into.
Yeah, I know I got my trademark through you for my online program, the process.
Indeed. A lot of services marks now are very popular.
Yeah, so I trademarked Stable, which is like Systems Trust, adaptability, brand and links and education, and got that all put through. So, but you do see that people think, oh, I can just do a trademark myself kind of thing, do it yourself ones. Well,
people can, and the trademark office, encourages people and helps people through the process. The big problem that people run into when they've done that themselves is the specification isn't right because they've not been given guidance about exactly the sort of specification that they want, or they find out because they haven't done a proper professional search there are earlier conflicting marks. And the third big elephant trap we see people fall into is it's very difficult then to get an international mark. So if it's a mark and it takes off in the UK, and say, for example, with your beauty programme, and I know that you've got clients all over globally, haven't you? So if you wanted to get that mark in the USA, you wanted to apply that service mark in Australia, for example, or somewhere else, you would find it difficult to get a trademark where you'd filed your own mark first for a whole host of reasons. In fact, it's virtually impossible to do that because you've then got to contact overseas agents, you've then got to get quotes, you've then got to get amended specifications. So it's doable, but it's quite a challenge. And who wants to become a trademark expert when when your expertise is elsewhere?
Yeah, well, that's it. I always, everything I do, I'll just go to the expert.
Yes.
Because I just think, then I know it's done right. And as well, I haven't got the time to learn it all and make sure that I'm doing it right. So
that's the big problem, isn't it? You wouldn't service your own car these days, would you? Because life is too complicated.
Yeah. And the time it would take me to do it, it's just not worth it, kind of thing.
The number of YouTube videos you'd have to watch.
I know. So, right. So we've covered trademarks, copywriting. What about licensing?
Well, licensing is a way of syndicating your rights. So say, for example, you've got a great AI program. Your AI program is really, really useful, and you've put it together. You spent a lot of time doing that, and you might want to license it out around other salons or other, hairdressers or whoever. That would deal with the licensing section. So I'd let you use it, and you could use it on your customers, your database, and you pay me a licensing fee for actually using that.
Yeah. So can that be, so that can be like courses, that can be...
Could be courses, it could be products. I mean, it might be that, for example, you have a hair care product that you've innovated over here, and people want to sell it in the States. You might license them the brand in the States, and they get it manufactured locally. So you'd have a licensing scenario there, or vice versa. It depends really on the licensing is a very, very flexible vehicle, but what it allows you to do is to take an idea and then let other people use it, but they pay for the usage.
So that would be also in like sort of like franchising models and things.
A franchising model, yeah, indeed. And you do see a lot of that franchising, where people will set not just a specification over the actual item itself, but they'll set specifications in relation to how it's manufactured, how it's sold, where people can get it from, availability, all those sorts of things. Licensing is just the most flexible route to market to make money, really, if you can get other people to pay for it.
And then other thing on top of that is patenting.
Yeah. Well, patenting's very, very expensive, but it is useful if you've really innovated something. So say, for example, over in my time as an IP lawyer, I've seen things patented, for example, new formulations for nail varnish.
Right, yes.
New systems for mixing nail varnish.
Right.
New formulations for hair care products. That's the kind of thing that patenting covers. It might cover also, I'm just trying to think what else it would cover in your industry. You might come out with, like Dyson, look at all the innovation that he's brought out with all the different hair dryers. And again, we had a lady recently who's got a really, really good product for dealing with afro hair, which is particularly a problem when you apply heat to it. But because she's had this problem, she's innovated in that arena and got her own product, and we've done registered designs on it. Because the look and feel of something's really important. We've registered a trademark.
No wonder you're fascinated by it. It is.
It's great. It's a fascinating area. It's like dealing with. I always think that IP law it's the most interesting area of law, because when you talk to people about their employment contracts or their leases or whatever, you kind of see their eyes glaze over a little bit, because you think, well, no, I'll definitely leave that to you. I want you to tell me what I need to know here. But with IP, people get much more engaged with it, because it's like talking about their baby. It's their innovation. It's what's driving their new business. And there's not a lot new in the world, is there? So those little incremental changes that people make to their business or their products or their services are what distinguish them from the crowd. And that gap, that very valuable gap, is the intellectual property.
Yeah, God, it's fascinating. So with things like patents and patents, do they take a long time to come through? I hear of people like on Dragon's Den, where the patent's always like pending kind of thing. Is it a long process?
It does take a little while to come through. It's what they call an examined process. So your patent application has to set out exactly what your new innovation is and how it's new and different and what problem it solves. And you put that into the patent office, and you'll have an examiner there who deals with your specific area, because you can imagine there's everything going into the patent office, from new formulations of petrol or petrochemicals through to hair dyes, through to pharmaceuticals, through to, dozens of other simple mechanical inventions. So it's examined, and the examiner will make comments on it, and then it will either be granted or they'll be granted subject to, various inquiries that the examiner makes as to how original it is. I mean, the fundamental requirement for a patent is it's got to be new, it's got to be novel, and it's also got to be innovative. So once it passes those two tests, then it's considered for a patent. There are some things that are specifically excluded from patenting. Software is explicitly excluded. The other thing that's explicitly excluded are things like surgical techniques. Oh. So if you're a doctor, you can, and you come out with a new device for, say, closing a wound up, you can patent the device. What you can't do is patent the technology, the sort of techniques behind it.
So you can't protect that at all?
No.
Oh, wow.
There are things like gene sequences over in Europe are not protectable. So when they came out with a testing kit for breast cancer, for example, they couldn't patent, because some breast cancer is linked to certain genetic sequences. They couldn't patent that in the UK. They did in the States. They couldn't patent that gene sequence in the UK and protect it, or in Europe. But what they did do was they patented the testing of it. Yeah, so you see the difference there. Yes, so we don't allow people to patent gene sequences, but we do allow them in a way to gain some protection from the formulations that, or the devices or the ideas that are associated with those particular gene sequences.
And with all of these, if you say you were thought, right, I just want to have protection in the UK.
Yes.
But then decided later that, no, I wanted to go to the States and Australia and places like that. Do you have to do the whole process all over again? Or once you've got one bit of it done, does that ease the process for the rest of the world?
Well, that's a good question. And that's ever it depends. I think the thing that we talk to people about all the time is having a strategy about it. Yeah. Because if you are going to patent something, you'll file your patent in the UK, and then you've got a period of 18 months to file it internationally. If you go past that period of 18 months, you've had it, which means you can't get then protection stay in one of your big markets, which might be the USA, it might be Japan. So that's something that people have to think about. The big companies only ever patent normally in a handful of countries because of the expense and also because they have to protect it. So they'll look at where their main markets are. Mm-hmm. So they will look at, for example, the UK, the EU, they'll look at the USA, Canada, possibly Australia, Japan, maybe China, depending on where their main markets are. And it's the same with trademarks, but the window is slightly shorter with trademarks. So again, we talk to people about filing in the UK, and then within a 6-month window of that filing, you can go international. Let's have a look at what other countries you might want to get cover in. And that serves two purposes, really. Number one, it means not all the expenses incurred up front. And number two, it gives them a little bit of breathing space to have a look at where things might be manufactured or where things might be sold.
Yeah. My God, it's such a huge topic.
It's a massive topic. And it's the same with registered design rights. Again, registered design rights are very, very popular at the moment. There's massive increase in registered design rights because people are realising how something looks is really important. If you've got something that's got a whole new look about it, whether it's a medical device or got medical applications or whether it's something just aesthetic, do you want a design registration in relation to it? Again, with the hair straighteners, those looked different.
Yeah.
And there was a value in the way that they looked different. It wasn't just functional. It was actually that they looked aesthetically pleasing. I mean, if you look at everything that Dyson does, it's all very aesthetically pleasing, isn't it? It's all very sleek lines and beautifully designed.
Yeah. But I suppose as well, because they're putting so much into their innovations, aren't they?
There's such investment in it.
Yeah.
And who doesn't like really nice packaging? I know that you can't always necessarily get certainly can't get a patent on most packaging now, but you can't get design right on it. But it still really adds to the value of your product.
I mean, Apple are huge on that, aren't they? Like
Massive.
how the box opens and everything like that, and the feel, and but that's all part of, like you say, the
It's
brand.
part of the
isn't it?
customer experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like going at my local beauticians where I go. They always have lots of lovely products in really nice packaging, and I'm always drawn to the packaging because it just that makes the experience so much better. Not only have you bought something that's in nice packaging, you've taken it home and you've then had a bit of a second bite of the cherry as you open it up and it's beautifully packaged.
Yeah, yeah. It's like Mulberry bags and that. I know someone who used to always buy a bag, but buy it sort of so that it got delivered, and she would talk more about the unveiling of it than the actual bag. So yeah, it's very, very much so. Can we just also talk a little bit about data protection?
Yes, yeah.
Because that's huge in our industry.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Obviously, you've got GDPR, and that was like, it was such a big thing, wasn't it? It was like you were going to get shot if you didn't do it correctly. Everyone was so terrified. But I suppose it made everyone do it. That was the good thing. So with things like data protection, obviously, as I say, we've all followed like GDPR and made sure we've got everything there. But then you do hear of cases of where, someone will leave a business and they've taken data from clients and things like that. And
that's a very serious problem, and it can be a very significant loss to businesses.
Yeah.
I remember a few years ago having a client who'd lost their not lost their database. They knew exactly where it had gone, but it had basically been stolen by a competitor, and it had been downloaded over a period of weeks actually, and was being used competitively against them. This was in fact holiday accommodation, and I said to the client at the start, he said, well, this, he says, we're noticing quite a few cancellations. Will this affect me? And I said to him, yes. I said, this will possibly take your business down, because what the competitor was doing was sort of like making it very public that these holiday lets were now effectively being managed by somebody else. So there was no kind of consent handover or anything like that. It panicked the people who'd booked holidays and wanted to carry on with the booking, and it caused all sorts of problems, and it did in fact bankrupt the original business that it happened to. Wow. So I mean, that's an extreme, that's an absolute extreme, but there's no doubt about it, the theft of databases and the theft of confidential information can be very damaging to businesses.
Yeah.
And again, it's about making it clear that this data belongs to the salon. It doesn't belong to particular practitioner, and that the confidential records that are kept on people, particularly where you're dealing with aesthetics and where people have procedures, that's highly sensitive information that stays under lock and key.
I think in our industry there's a lot of, well, hopefully there is awareness now where, because there's a lot of businesses where they are now doing a mix of self-employed and employed, and then of course then you're on shared databases as well, because as soon as like you've got someone in self-employed in the business, if I'm right, then like
they want to keep their information.
And whether that client is just coming in for the practitioner, that is the data then shared because it's on the same premises, or is it separate to just if, like, say for example, you have someone self-employed as a nail technician,
yes,
and you also have employed who are doing facials, that data then is shared across both.
It's really difficult in those sorts of situations, but I think the key thing is to make sure it's absolutely clear contractually as to what people can do. What you don't want is a nail technician leaving with the entire database. Or indeed, it would be unfair on the nail technician if she left to go somewhere else, and she had no access to people that she'd acted for some time.
Yeah.
I think it's best always to organise this kind of data well before there's any dispute. You know, when you take people on board, make it clear what the absolute cut-off point is. And there are ways of setting up, practical ways of setting up databases so that information can't readily be accessed by somebody who's not entitled to it.
Yeah. I mean, our software, software companies now are really, really good. So fingers crossed, hopefully that it stays like that. But I think it's making sure, I always like say to everyone, just get all of the grey areas covered, all the things, all the what if scenarios. What if this, like nail tech coming in, it's like it only lasts 2 weeks, but then wants all that data to take somewhere else, because they could basically just go around the corner. So it is all these things that you've got to think about, that like all the clients that you have collected and all the data you've got, once you bring someone in self-employed, you are sharing with them as well, with the clients.
It's really difficult. I think employing people these days is the most fraught area.
Yeah.
And as I say, I think the key is to delineate it. And also, I guess the other thing is too, if your salon offers a particular kind of ambience, atmosphere, something that other salons can't offer, because feels very luxurious when you walk in. You're treated like an old friend. You know, they have your cup of tea or coffee ready, or your glass of Prosecco, or whatever your sort of poison of choice is. Then people will come back to that experience, won't they? So even if you have somebody self-employed there, they'll come back because they're getting that kind of luxurious experience that, with all due respect, if your nail technician goes around the corner and starts on her own, she can't normally offer that level of client service. And I think that's really important these days, that you can only do so much with employees, but you do have to hug your customers tight.
Oh yeah, totally. And the thing is, you do have to think about all these things and protect them, because I see it go wrong all the time. I mean, personally, I've always employed, but we do have like external practitioners who come in, and it is just making sure that you've got it all watertight beforehand.
It's really difficult, and I think you're lucky in a way that you've managed to find loyal staff. Again, that's a big problem now, is there isn't this, people move jobs much more quickly. You're in the northeast where perhaps people are a little bit more loyal and so on, but in lots of parts of the country it's really difficult to get good staff. Once you've got them, you hang on to them like a good customer, don't you?
Yeah, totally.
So I see I understand now, and of course the business model as well. Having people there who aren't an overhead to the business necessarily, people, particularly with the increasing cost of employing people. It's not just that national insurance has gone up, minimum wage has gone up, things like pensions and so on. It makes it expensive to employ people. So I think we have to have a system that understands that as well.
And you've just got to weigh the costs up of like employing someone as to making sure you're protected if you're bringing someone in self-employed or an external provider to cover part of the services. But say, I mean, our industry, fingers crossed, I think it's very rare that you hear of things going wrong. But when things do go wrong, Liz, so if someone wanted to get some advice, what is the best way to get advice? Is there an element of complimentary advice out there, not just with you guys or in the industry, or is it best to just like Google it and try and find out what?
Well, I think the trouble is Google leads people down a very false sense of security, and even worse is ChatGPT. because ChatGPT, I mean, we use specialist legal AI, which does come up with the right answers, but things like ChatGPT tend to be way off the mark because they're large language models that depend on things like US law for a start. So it tends to come up with some strange answers. I would say most lawyers will give you a free sort of 20-minute interview. We do that all the time. 20 minutes, let's chat the problem over, let's put it into perspective. Again, I'm a big believer in your lawyer taking you firmly and saying, let's put this into a commercial perspective, rather than you get really, really het up and annoyed because it's your baby that's been affected, your sort of income, your livelihood that's been affected. And I think an effective lawyer will sit you down and go, okay, but what does that look like on the balance sheet? Where is that going to take you? Do we take action because it's justified to take action? Or do we let them walk away and go, are there other methods of resolving it? It's a bad experience because we've all had them. And, I'm the first to let you know that lawyers are not cheap. Good lawyers are not cheap. Bad lawyers aren't cheap either. But I think you really do need somebody who holds your hand and goes, this is what I would suggest that you do, and this is why I would suggest that you do it. So I think, given that it doesn't necessarily cost you a lot of money to get that advice, and we certainly do things like fixed fee, sort of notes of advice. So we'll give you, for example, a note of advice before you've ever leapt into action, so you can see exactly in black and white what your options are.
Yeah.
And you can then discuss that with your business partner, because again, there's often more than one person making this decision about, well, what do we do about this? How do we move it forward?
Yeah, but I think it's peace of mind as well.
Yeah.
And having that advice, and you would like to think that all companies act like you guys, where they would like to say, right, we need to look at the sort of the expenditure to take this further, or do you put it to bed and just think, right, how can we move on?
I think if you're going to ask a lawyer to do something, ask them how many times they've done it before. It's like you wouldn't go for necessarily, I don't know, Botox injections from somebody who was a rookie. You'd want to know that somebody who'd done that had got some experience done it. Now, we've all had to start from somewhere, but some people have been better supervised and trained than others. So I think look at their experience. I mean, that's why we've remained a specialist practice, because people come to us, they know what we do.
Yeah.
It makes us easy to market, but that's what we do. Will we advise you about your lease or your employment contracts? No. Your shareholders agreements? No. We don't do that. We can find somebody who will do it for you. But again, with all these sorts of problems that you get, I think if you're going to instruct somebody, go to somebody who is known to be an expert and has got, a track record in doing it.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you could ever go to anyone better than you guys.
And thank you, Susan.
Well, as I say, all the years that I've known you, you're always my go-to. And the thing is that, so if anyone comes to me, I'm just straight away would always refer them straight over to you, or give you a ring on on their behalf, just to get a little bit of guidance of thing.
The beauty industry is an interesting industry. It's very diverse. As I say, I've really noticed the growth in certain areas over the past few years. The number of brands, I mean, I was looking at body oils just at the weekend, and the number of brands that there are out there, I mean, even 10 years ago there was a handful. Now there's hundreds.
Yeah.
And lots of big names come out with brand extensions all the time. But we also see a lot of people developing their own hair care products. There are massively different variations in the standards of those hair care products. And I didn't realise there's quite a big difference in formulation between here and the US on hair care products. Yeah. And those are all sorts of quite interesting areas. Opportunities, but also elephant traps that people get involved with.
Yeah, totally. Wow, Liz. I think, I think this is a topic that is one of those things that you don't realise until you get into it, isn't it? Kind of thing. I think, someone sets up a business and just thinks, oh, just set up a business and don't really need to think too much about.
Well, we all set up like that, don't we?
Yeah.
It was, I set up in my back bedroom and I thought, oh, this is great. I remember the first day in business, I sort of like did some work in the morning, and then I used to cycle a lot. I went out for a bike ride in the afternoon thinking this is great. And I never did that again because I never got the time to do it. And you suddenly realise that you've thrown yourself into something. And I've no doubt that you've got quite a few people who watch this who go, well, I didn't really intend on having a salon with 10 employees in, but that's what I've got. And now where do I go from here? How do I expand that out? How do we look at new areas, look at new business? So we all have to start somewhere, and intellectual property is the way ahead, and it's the way a lot of people grow.
Yeah. And as I say, I'm just so fortunate that I just tend to get to meet the best people, and our meeting has just been so fruitful over the years because, as I say, I like to make sure that I've got the right experts for everyone, and you are just, as I say, it's great to have you as one of our advisors, and you're just awesome. So thank you so much.
Thank
Liz,
you. You got a problem, bring it to Liz.
But this is the thing, though, that it's like, just before we end, people are like, they're fearful of lawyers, aren't
Of course,
they?
yeah.
And
We're scary, aren't we?
Yeah, and think, oh my word, they're going to talk in a totally different language or baffle me. And that's what I love about you. It's so like straight down the line of just like, and make it sort of,
Make it accessible. Make it accessible.
Yeah, just so that it's easy to follow, and like, and I never come away like thinking, well, I'm not quite sure what Liz said there. Always, it's like straightforward. So I love that. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, Liz, or with any of your team, how do they go about that? We will put everything in the show
website.
Notes.
Yeah. Website is good, virtuosolegal.com. Also on LinkedIn, I blog quite a lot on LinkedIn. So I'm Elizabeth Ward on LinkedIn. It's my Sunday name. Yeah. We do have a presence on Instagram as well, but it's mainly LinkedIn is my main page, and we've got quite a big Virtuoso Legal page on LinkedIn too. But yeah, I'm easy to find if you want to track me down.
And absolutely fabulous. So thank you so much.
Thank you.